The vase hit the marble floor at 4:47 p.m., and Elena's life shattered with it. 1 second, she was folding linens in the hallway. The next, the sound, that sickening, crystalline explosion, ripped through the mansion like a gunshot. Her blood turned to ice. Not the vase. God, please, not that vase. But she already knew. Everyone in the household knew that sound. 15,000-year-old Ming Dynasty porcelain doesn't break quietly. Elena dropped the towels and ran toward the east gallery, her heart hammering so hard she could taste copper. The late afternoon sun sliced through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a scene from her worst nightmare. Azure and white fragments scattered across the floor like broken stars. The pedestal stood empty, accusatory. And there, frozen in the doorway with her back pressed against the frame, stood Mr. Harrington's daughter, 10-year-old Sarah, tears streaming down her flushed cheeks. Eyes wide with terror, the girl's gaze locked onto Elena's, and in that split second, 1,000 unspoken words passed between them. Please, please don't tell him. He'll hate me. He already hates me. Elena's decision took less than a heartbeat. Go, she whispered, barely moving her lips. Go to your room. Now. Sarah's mouth opened, trembling, but Elena shook her head once, sharp and final. The girl turned and fled, her footsteps muffled by the Persian runner, disappearing around the corner just as Elena heard the thunder of dress shoes on marble. Christopher Harrington appeared at the opposite end of the gallery within seconds, his 6'3" frame cutting an imposing silhouette against the backlit hallway. His steel-gray suit was immaculate, his jaw set in that perpetual expression of controlled fury that had built a tech empire and destroyed countless competitors. He stopped. His eyes found the shattered vase. Then they found Elena, standing alone amid the wreckage. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. Hey there, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the channel. Or if this is your first time here, welcome to a story that's about to shake everything you thought you knew about judgment, sacrifice, and the price of protecting the ones we love. I'm so glad you're here with me today. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. Are you cozied up at home, on your lunch break, maybe listening while you work? I love hearing from you. And listen, if you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button right now. You don't want to miss what happens next in this story. Trust me, the twists will leave you breathless. Now let's dive back in, because Christopher Harrington is about to make a decision that will haunt him. What happened? His voice was arctic, each word a shard of ice. Elena's fingers trembled at her sides. She forced them still. 23 months she'd worked in this mansion. 23 months of invisible perfection, of anticipating needs before they were spoken, of polishing away every trace of human existence from these cold, perfect rooms. 23 months of watching a lonely little girl wander these halls like a ghost, desperate for 5 minutes of her father's attention. 23 months that were about to end. I'm sorry, Mr. Harrington. Her voice came out steady, even though her insides were collapsing. I was dusting the pedestal. I must have bumped it. You bumped it. He moved closer, and Elena could see the vein pulsing at his temple. You bumped a vase that has survived 15,000 years, that was insured for $2 million, that has been handled by emperors and collectors with more care than most people give their own children. His words struck like physical blows, but it was that last phrase that made Elena's chest tighten. More care than most people give their own children. Did he hear himself? Did he have any idea? I take full responsibility, she said quietly. Full responsibility. Christopher laughed, sharp and bitter. How generous. And how exactly do you propose to take full responsibility for destroying an irreplaceable piece of history? What's your salary, Elena? $38,000 a year. Her silence was answer enough. By now, the other staff had gathered at the far end of the gallery. Margaret, the head housekeeper, with her hand pressed to her mouth. Thomas, the driver, looking at the floor. Young Sophia, the new kitchen assistant, watching with wide, frightened eyes. They were all witnesses to Elena's execution. I've run this company for 18 years, Christopher continued, his voice rising. 18 years of building something from nothing, of turning million-dollar decisions into billion-dollar realities. And do you know how I did it? By holding people accountable, by refusing to accept excuses, by understanding that actions have consequences. He was standing over her now, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and cold, like winter in a bottle. You're fired. Effective immediately. You have 30 minutes to collect your things and leave the property. Margaret will ensure you're escorted out. The words landed like a physical blow, but Elena kept her face neutral. She'd known this was coming. She'd chosen this. I understand, she said. No severance. No reference. You'll be lucky if I don't pursue legal action for the destruction of property. Something in Margaret's expression crumpled. Thomas shook his head slowly, sadly. They'd worked with Elena long enough to know her character, her careful nature. This didn't make sense to them. But Elena couldn't defend herself. Not without throwing Sarah under a bus driven by her own father's rage. I'm truly sorry, Elena said again. And she meant it. Not for the vase, but for whatever had broken in this family long before any porcelain ever touched the floor. Christopher turned away, dismissing her with the gesture. Get her out of my sight. As Margaret approached with tears in her eyes, as Elena turned to walk out of the gallery for the last time, she caught a glimpse of movement on the second-floor landing. Just a flash of a small face, pale and stricken, watching through the banister rails. Sarah. Elena gave the smallest nod. It's okay. You're safe. Then she walked toward the service stairs, each step carrying her away from the only job that had ever felt like more than just work, from the little girl who'd started to feel like the daughter she'd never had. She didn't know that in exactly 4 hours and 13 minutes, Christopher Harrington would sit down at his desk to review the day's security footage. She didn't know that what he would see would destroy him in ways no shattered vase ever could. She didn't know that sometimes the things we break can be pieced back together, but only if we're willing to cut ourselves on the shards of our own mistakes. The truth was waiting in pixels and timestamps. And the truth was going to change everything. Elena's studio apartment had never felt smaller. She sat on the edge of her second-hand couch, still wearing her uniform, the crisp black dress and white apron that Margaret had silently helped her fold into her bag before the security escort. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking, not from fear of unemployment, though God knew she should be terrified. The rent was due in 2 weeks, and her mother's medication costs were climbing every month. No, she was shaking because she kept seeing Sarah's face. That moment of pure terror when the girl thought her father would discover what she'd done. That relief, painful and profound, when Elena had taken the fall. What kind of child is that afraid of her own father? Elena pulled out her phone. 3 missed calls from her younger sister, Rosita. 1 text from Margaret. Call me when you can. This isn't right. But the message that made her breath catch was from an unknown number, sent 20 minutes ago. Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sarah had somehow gotten her number. Smart girl. Brave girl. Lonely girl. Elena's fingers hovered over the keyboard. She wanted to tell Sarah it was okay, that she'd do it again in a heartbeat, that some things mattered more than jobs or money or priceless faces. But what if Christopher checked his daughter's phone? What if Elena's contact got Sarah into even more trouble? She set the phone down, unanswered. For miles across the city, Christopher Harrington sat in his corner office on the 47th floor, watching the sun bleed orange across the skyline. He should have been reviewing the merger documents. The Tokyo deal was closing in 36 hours, and there were still clauses to negotiate. Instead, he kept seeing Elena's face. That strange, calm acceptance when he'd fired her. No pleading, no tears, no desperate explanations. Just, I understand. In 18 years of firing people, and he'd fired dozens, he'd never seen that kind of quiet dignity. It bothered him, like a splinter he couldn't locate. His office door opened without a knock. Only one person in the world would dare. You're a fool, Christopher. His sister, Victoria, strode in wearing a burgundy power suit and an expression that could cut glass. At 41, she was 3 years his senior and had never let him forget it. Not now, Vic. Yes, now. She dropped a folder on his desk. I heard what happened. Elena Rodriguez? Really? The woman who worked 16-hour days when Sarah had the flu last winter? Who learned to make those horrible green smoothies Sarah actually drinks? Who's the only person in that mausoleum you call home that your daughter actually talks to? Christopher's jaw tightened. She destroyed a $2 million artifact. So dock her pay. Put her on probation. Don't throw her out like garbage in front of the entire staff. Victoria leaned against his desk, her voice softening. Chris, when did you become this person? This person built Harrington Technologies from a garage startup to a $20 billion. This person used to have a heart. Victoria's eyes held something painful. Before Rebecca died, you were different. Harder in business. Yes, but never cruel. Never cold. The name hung in the air between them. Rebecca, his wife, Sarah's mother, gone 4 years now, and the wound still felt fresh when someone poked it. Don't, Christopher said quietly. Someone has to. Victoria picked up the silver-framed photo on his desk. Sarah at 6, gap-toothed and grinning, wrapped in her mother's arms. That little girl is drowning, and you're too busy building empires to notice. She's 10 years old, Chris. She needs her father, not a checkbook. I provide everything she needs. Except you. Victoria set the photo down with a decisive click. When's the last time you had dinner with her? Not in the same room while you answer emails. Actually talk to her. Christopher opened his mouth, then closed it. Last week. 2 weeks ago. The days blurred together in an endless stream of meetings and contracts and international calls. That's what I thought. Victoria moved toward the door, then paused. Elena Rodriguez was the only person in that house who treated Sarah like a child instead of an obligation. And you just fired her for being clumsy. Brilliant leadership, little brother. The door closed with a soft click that somehow sounded louder than a slam. Sarah Harrington sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, surrounded by sketchbooks and colored pencils that Elena had bought her 3 months ago for her birthday. Not expensive gifts. Elena couldn't afford expensive, but they were thoughtful. Elena had noticed Sarah drawing on the corners of her homework, had asked what she liked to create, had actually listened to the answer. Unlike her father, who'd written a check to her trust fund and called it a birthday celebration. Sarah picked up a purple pencil and tried to draw, but her hand wouldn't cooperate. She kept seeing the moment Elena's eyes had met hers in the gallery. That instantaneous, selfless decision. Go. No hesitation. No calculation. Just protection. Sarah had never had that before. Not since Mom died. Dad had staff who managed her schedule, tutors who educated her, a driver who transported her. But no one who actually saw her. No one who asked how she felt, or what scared her, or what she dreamed about. Except Elena. And now Elena was gone because Sarah had been running. Because she'd been crying after another lunch eaten alone in the dining room while her father took calls in his office. Because she'd been distracted, reckless, stupid. The knock on her door was sharp. Sarah? Her father's voice. Sarah's stomach clenched. He never came to her room. Never. Come in, she managed. Christopher entered, still wearing his office suit, looking uncomfortable in the pink and white space filled with stuffed animals and books. He'd probably been in this room twice since they'd moved into the mansion 3 years ago. We need to talk, he said. Sarah's heart hammered. Did he know? Had he figured it out? About. She tried to sound casual. About Elena. Christopher sat on the edge of her bed, an awkward giant in a child's domain. Did you know her well? It was the gentleness in his voice that broke something in Sarah. Not the anger she'd expected. Not the interrogation. Just a question that sounded almost human. She was nice to me, Sarah said carefully. Nice how? Sarah shrugged, fighting the tears that wanted to come. She asked about my day. Remembered stuff I told her. Made me laugh. She looked up at her father. She treated me like I mattered. Christopher's expression flickered. Something painful crossed his features before the executive mask slid back into place. You know you matter, Sarah? Do I? The words slipped out before Sarah could stop them. The silence stretched between them, vast and terrible. Christopher opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I've been busy with the Tokyo merger. I know. You're always busy with something. Sarah turned back to her sketchbook, dismissing him the way he'd dismissed her 1,000 times before. She expected him to leave. That's what he always did when conversations got uncomfortable. Instead, he stayed sitting there, looking lost. Your mother would be disappointed in me, he said finally, so quietly Sarah almost didn't hear it. Sarah looked up, shocked. Her father never talked about Mom. Never. She'd say I'm failing you, Christopher continued. And she'd be right. For the first time in 4 years, Sarah saw something crack in her father's armor. Not much. Just a hairline fracture. But it was there. Dad, I should let you rest. School tomorrow. Christopher stood, the moment closing as quickly as it had opened. He moved toward the door, then paused. Elena didn't deserve what I did today. I'll figure out how to make it right. He left before Sarah could respond. She sat there in the silence, her heart a war between hope and fear. Her phone buzzed. A text from her friend Madison. "You okay? You seemed weird today." Sarah didn't answer. Instead, she pulled up Elena's message thread, reading her own apology over and over. No response. Maybe Elena hated her now. Maybe she'd ruined the one good thing in her life. Outside her window, the sun had finally set. The mansion's security lights flickered on, flooding the grounds with artificial brightness. And in his office downstairs, Christopher Harrington opened his laptop to review the day's security footage, a habit he'd maintained since the break-in scare 2 years ago. He didn't know he was about to watch his world end. Christopher clicked through the security footage with mechanical precision. East Wing hallway, for 30 p.m., fast forward. South gallery, for 40 p.m., fast forward. He did this every night. A ritual born from paranoia and control, watching his empire reduced to black and white pixels and timestamp codes. He reached 4:45 p.m. East Gallery camera. His finger hovered over the fast-forward button, then stopped. The vase stood pristine on its pedestal, catching the afternoon light. The gallery was empty. Then, movement at the edge of the frame. "Sarah." Christopher leaned forward, his breath catching. His daughter entered the gallery at 4:46 p.m., not walking but running. Even in grayscale, he could see her shoulders shaking. Crying. She was crying. Why was she crying? Sarah stumbled. No, not stumbled. She stopped, pressed her hands to her face. Her whole body was racked with sobs, the kind of desperate, silent crying children do when they've learned that being heard makes things worse. Christopher's chest constricted. When had he last seen his daughter cry? When had he last been present enough to witness her pain? On screen, Sarah moved toward the windows, her back to the camera. Her hand reached out, bracing against the wall. But she misjudged the distance. Her elbow caught the pedestal. Time seemed to slow. The vase teetered. Sarah spun, reaching for it. Her fingertips brushed porcelain. For one impossible moment, it looked like she might catch it. Then gravity won. The vase hit the marble. Even without sound, Christopher could imagine the explosion, could see his daughter's face contort in absolute terror. Sarah froze. 1 second. 2. 3. Her head whipped toward the doorway. She'd heard footsteps approaching. Christopher's own footsteps, he realized with growing horror. His daughter heard him coming and looked like a trapped animal. Then Elena appeared. The maid entered at 4:47 p.m., arms full of linens. She took in the scene instantly, the shattered vase, the terrified child. And Christopher watched, his world tilting on its axis, as Elena's expression transformed. No shock, no panic, just immediate, crystal-clear decision. Elena dropped the linens. She moved to Sarah, and even through the grainy footage, Christopher could read her lips. Go. Now. Sarah shook her head, frantic. She was trying to stay, trying to explain. But Elena physically turned the girl toward the far exit, her hand gentle but firm on Sarah's shoulder. Sarah hesitated one more heartbeat, looking back at Elena with an expression that made Christopher's throat burn. Then his daughter fled. Elena stood alone in the wreckage for exactly 3 seconds. Christopher could see her chest rise and fall, steadying herself, preparing herself. Then she positioned herself in the center of the destruction, squared her shoulders, and waited. For him. She waited for him to arrive and destroy her life. And she did it without hesitation because his daughter, his lonely, neglected daughter, needed protection. From him. Christopher's hand shook as he paused the footage. Elena's face filled the screen, frozen in that moment before he'd entered. Her expression was serene, resolved. This was a woman who'd made a choice and accepted the consequences. The timestamp read 4:47 and 23 seconds p.m. At 4:47 and 45 seconds p.m., Christopher Harrington had entered that gallery and annihilated an innocent woman's life. Oh God! The words scraped out of him, raw and broken. Oh God, what have I done? He replayed it, watched Sarah's tears, Elena's sacrifice, the moment truth became lie. Then he replayed it again, and again, each viewing carved deeper into him, exposing something rotten he'd been ignoring for 4 years. His daughter had been crying, alone, in an empty gallery of a house filled with staff paid to care for her. And when she'd accidentally broken something, her first instinct wasn't to find her father, it was to run from him. She was afraid of him. His 10-year-old daughter was afraid of him. Christopher was moving before conscious thought caught up. He grabbed his phone, scrolled to Elena's contact. Employee files kept emergency numbers for everyone. His finger hit dial. 1 ring. 2. 3. Hello. Her voice was cautious. Of course it was. Why would she want to hear from the man who'd publicly humiliated and fired her? Elena. His voice cracked on her name. I need to tell you. Mr. Harrington. She sounded tired. So tired. If this is about legal action, I can't afford a lawyer, so whatever you're planning to. No. Elena, listen to me. I saw the footage. Silence. The kind of silence that screams. I saw everything. Christopher continued, the words tumbling out. I saw Sarah. I saw what really happened. I saw what you did. Mr. Harrington. Why? The question exploded out of him. Why would you do that? Why would you sacrifice your job, your reputation, your livelihood for? Because she's a child. Elena's voice was quiet but firm. Because she was terrified. Because someone needed to protect her. From me, Christopher thought. From her own father. I need to fix this, he said. Your job? I'll reinstate you immediately. Double your salary. I'll give you a formal apology in front of the entire staff. Whatever you need. What I need, Elena interrupted, and now there was steel in her voice, is for you to ask yourself why your daughter was crying so hard she couldn't see where she was going. Why she was so afraid of telling you the truth that a stranger taking the blame seemed like the better option. What I need is for you to be a father, Mr. Harrington. The words hit like a physical blow. Christopher sank into his desk chair, his free hand pressed against his face. I know, he whispered. God help me, I know. Do you? Elena's voice softened slightly. Because I've worked in your home for almost 2 years, and I've watched that little girl become a ghost. She eats alone, sleeps alone, does homework alone. The only time she smiles is when someone, anyone, treats her like she matters. And that's not my job to fix, Mr. Harrington. It's yours. Christopher couldn't speak. His throat had closed around words too big to fit through. Sarah texted me today, Elena continued. Apologizing. A 10-year-old child apologizing for being clumsy, for getting me fired, for existing in a way that caused problems. Does that sound right to you? Does that sound like a childhood? No. The word came out broken. I don't want your money, Elena said. I don't even want my job back. Not if it means enabling you to keep ignoring what's happening under your own roof. Then what do you want? I want you to talk to your daughter. Really talk to her. I want you to ask why she was crying. I want you to know her favorite color, her biggest fear, what she wants to be when she grows up. I want, Elena's voice caught. I want her to have what I'd give anything to have. A parent who shows up. The line went quiet except for Elena's breathing, slightly uneven now. My father died when I was 8, she said finally. Car accident. I spent the rest of my childhood wishing I could have one more day with him. One more conversation. One more chance to tell him I loved him. And your daughter has you right there, alive and healthy, and she might as well be an orphan. Christopher felt something crack open in his chest, something that had been sealed shut since Rebecca's funeral. Grief. Guilt. Crushing, suffocating shame. I don't know how, he admitted. I don't know how to be what she needs. Then learn. Elena's voice was gentle now. Start small. Have breakfast with her. Ask about her day and actually listen. Be present, Mr. Harrington. That's all children really want. Someone who's present. Will you help me? The question came out desperate. Please. You're the only person she trusts, the only one who's gotten through to her. I can't do this alone. Elena was quiet for a long moment. Christopher held his breath, waiting for her to tell him to go to hell. He deserved it. I'll think about it, she said finally. But Mr. Harrington, if I come back, things have to change. Really change. I won't watch that little girl suffer while you hide behind your empire. They will. I swear to you they will. We'll see. Elena paused. There's something you should know. Sarah didn't break that vase because she was careless. She was crying because she'd had lunch alone again. Because she'd set a place for you at the table and you never came. She told me about it last week. How she keeps hoping you'll surprise her one day. She was running because her heart was broken, Mr. Harrington. And that vase was just collateral damage. The phone slipped from Christopher's hand. He sat there in his office, surrounded by awards and achievements and proof of his success, and felt like the poorest man alive. Downstairs, Sarah was probably in her room, drawing pictures no one would see, reading books no one would ask about, living a life that happened in the margins of his ambition. Christopher stood. His legs felt unsteady, but he moved anyway. Out of his office, down the hall, up the stairs, Each step was a choice. Each step was toward something he should have been moving toward for 4 years. He reached Sarah's door and raised his hand to knock. Then he heard it. Soft and muffled, but unmistakable. His daughter was crying. Again. Still. Always. And this time, he was going to do something about it. Christopher knocked. The crying stopped instantly. He heard rustling, the quick sound of someone wiping their face, composing themselves. Hiding. Come in. Sarah's voice was steady. Practiced. The voice of a child who'd learned to conceal her pain. Christopher opened the door. Sarah sat cross-legged on her bed, a book open in her lap, positioned too perfectly, like she'd just grabbed it for cover. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but she looked at him with that careful blankness he recognized now for what it was. A mask, just like his. Hey, he said, and immediately felt foolish. When had he last started a conversation with his daughter? When had he last entered this room, without a specific purpose? Hi, Dad. Sarah's fingers gripped the book. Do you need something? Do you need something? As if he were a client. A stranger. Christopher moved into the room, suddenly aware of how large he was in this space, how intrusive. He spotted a beanbag chair in the corner, purple, well-worn. He sat, folding his tall frame into it awkwardly. Sarah's eyes widened. Her father had never sat in her beanbag chair. Her father had never sat anywhere in her room except the edge of her bed during the brief good-night visits he'd managed in those first months after Mom died. I wanted to talk, Christopher said. If that's okay. Okay. Sarah's voice was cautious. Christopher looked at his hands. Executive hands. Hands that signed million-dollar deals and commanded boardrooms. Hands that had no idea how to reach across 3 feet of carpet to his own daughter. I spoke with Elena tonight, he began. Sarah's entire body tensed. Is she in trouble? Because I can explain, I can tell you what really. I know what really happened. Christopher met her eyes. I saw the security footage, Sarah. I know you broke the vase. I know Elena took the blame to protect you. The color drained from Sarah's face. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I was just. Why were you crying? The question stopped Sarah mid-sentence. She stared at her father like he'd spoken a foreign language. What? In the footage. Before you broke the vase. You were crying. Running and crying. What? Sarah's mouth opened, closed. Her fingers twisted in the book pages. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Since when? The words slipped out sharp, bitter. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth, shocked at her own boldness. Christopher felt the words like a knife between his ribs. Since right now? Since I realized I've been the worst father in the world, and I don't want to be that person anymore. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. You're not the worst. I missed lunch with you again today, didn't I? Christopher's voice cracked. Elena told me. You set a place for me. You hoped I'd come. A tear slipped down Sarah's cheek. Then another. You were busy. The Tokyo thing. The Tokyo thing will always be there. Another merger, another deal, another meeting. But you, Christopher's throat tightened. You're 10 years old once. And I'm missing it. I've missed so much of it. Sarah was crying openly now, not trying to hide it anymore. I thought you didn't want to be around me. After Mom died, you just disappeared. And I thought maybe I reminded you too much of her. That it hurt to look at me. Oh, Sarah. Christopher slid off the beanbag chair onto his knees, moving closer. Is that what you've been thinking? All this time. You never want to talk. You're always working. And when you do see me, you look so sad. Sarah wiped her face with her sleeve. I tried to be less trouble. I tried to be quiet and good and not need anything so you wouldn't have to be sad. But it didn't work. You still stayed away. Christopher felt something break open inside him. Years of grief and guilt and rage at the universe for taking Rebecca too soon. But underneath it all was this. His daughter, believing she was the problem. His daughter, making herself smaller to accommodate his pain. Come here, he said softly. Sarah hesitated, then slid off the bed. Christopher opened his arms, and she fell into them. This 10-year-old girl who'd been carrying the weight of her father's grief like it was her responsibility. He held her while she sobbed, really sobbed, the kind of crying that empties you out and fills you back up at the same time. I'm sorry, Christopher whispered into her hair. I'm so sorry, baby girl. You didn't do anything wrong. You never did anything wrong. I was drowning, and I forgot you were drowning too. I miss her, Sarah choked out. I miss Mom so much, and I couldn't even talk to you about it because you looked like you'd break if I mentioned her name. I know. I know. But that was wrong. That was me being a coward. Christopher pulled back enough to see her face. Your mom, she would be furious with me right now. She'd tell me I was being an idiot. She'd tell me that you need me to be stronger, not weaker. Sarah gave a watery laugh. She would have said worse than idiot. Probably. Christopher smiled through his own tears. She never held back, did she? She used to say you needed someone to keep you honest. That you'd forget you were human if she didn't remind you. Sarah's voice was softer now, remembering. She was right. She usually was. Christopher tucked a strand of hair behind Sarah's ear. And now I need you to keep me honest. Can you do that? Can you tell me when I'm messing up? When I'm choosing work over you? When I'm being an idiot? Really, really, I'm going to try to be better, Sarah. Not perfect, I'll still mess up. But better. Present. Here. He squeezed her shoulders gently. Starting tomorrow, I'm having breakfast with you. Every morning. No phone, no laptop, just us. Deal. Sarah searched his face, looking for the lie, the excuse, the inevitable disappointment. What about your meetings? They start at 9. Breakfast is at 7:30. Plenty of time. Christopher made a mental note to call his assistant tonight, clear his morning schedule permanently. And lunch. I want to have lunch with you too. Here at home, or I can pick you up from school, whatever you want. You can't pick me up from school every day. Then twice a week. Wednesdays and Fridays. I'll be there at 3:15. Christopher was making promises, big ones, and some part of him whispered that he couldn't keep them all. But he shoved that voice down. He'd keep them or die trying. Sarah bit her lip. What about Elena? What about her? Are you going to hire her back? Christopher hesitated. I asked her to come back. She said she'd think about it. But Sarah, she said something important. She said she won't come back if things don't really change. If I don't really change. Do you think you can? Sarah's voice was small, hopeful, terrified. I don't know, Christopher admitted. But I'm going to try. Will you help me? How? Tell me about yourself. Tell me things I should already know, but don't. Your favorite color, your favorite. Purple, Sarah interrupted. My favorite color is purple. My favorite food is Mom's lasagna recipe that Elena learned to make. My favorite subject is art, but I'm bad at math. I want to be a veterinarian or maybe an animator. I'm scared of thunderstorms in the dark and, she paused, looking down. And disappointing you. You could never disappoint me, Christopher said fiercely. I broke your vase. I don't care about the vase. I care about you. He lifted her chin gently. You hear me? The vase was porcelain. Beautiful, expensive, old porcelain. But you're irreplaceable. You're the most important thing in my entire world, and I've been treating you like an afterthought. That ends now. Sarah threw her arms around his neck, holding on like he might disappear. Christopher held her back, making silent promises to Rebecca, wherever she was. I'll do better. I'll be better. I'll be the father our daughter deserves. If you're watching this and you've ever felt invisible in your own home, ever felt like you had to shrink yourself to fit someone else's pain, drop a comment below. You're not alone. Sometimes the people who love us forget to show it, but that doesn't mean you don't matter. You matter so much. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see how this family finds their way back to each other, because trust me, we're just getting started. They stayed like that for a long time, father and daughter, rebuilding a bridge that should never have crumbled in the first place. Neither of them noticed Margaret standing in the hallway, one hand pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. She'd worked for the Harrington family for 6 years, through Rebecca's death, through Christopher's transformation into a workaholic ghost, through Sarah's slow fade into invisibility. She'd watched it all fall apart. Now, maybe, she was watching it come back together. Margaret pulled out her phone and sent a text to Elena. He's with her. Really with her. Come back. They need you. He needs to prove he meant what he said. For miles away, Elena sat in her apartment, staring at the message. Her heart warred with her head. She'd meant what she said. She wouldn't enable Christopher's neglect. But Sarah, that little girl deserved someone in her corner. Elena's phone buzzed again. Another text, this time from an unknown number. Please come back. Dad and I need you. Sarah. Then, seconds later, from Christopher. I can't fix this alone. Please. Elena closed her eyes, took a breath, made a decision. She typed back, 1-month trial. But I'm not just the maid anymore. If I'm coming back, I'm part of Sarah's support system. That means boundaries, schedules, and you actually showing up. Miss one breakfast, one lunch, and I'm gone. Understood. Christopher's response was immediate. Understood. Thank you. Thank you. Elena set her phone down and looked around her tiny apartment. Tomorrow, she'd walk back into that mansion. But this time, everything would be different. It had to be. 3 weeks later, Christopher Harrington was learning that change was a war fought one breakfast at a time. He'd kept his promises. Every single one. Breakfast at 7:30, no phone, no laptop, just pancakes and Sarah's stories about school. Lunch on Wednesdays and Fridays, sometimes at home, sometimes picking her up for their favorite diner. Dinners together 4 nights a week. He'd cleared his schedule, delegated ruthlessly, and discovered that the company didn't actually collapse when he prioritized his daughter. Elena had returned, but not as the invisible maid she'd been before. She was a presence now, sitting with them at breakfast sometimes, joining their dinners, teaching Sarah to bake while Christopher watched and learned. She set boundaries like steel walls. Family time was sacred, Sarah's needs came first, and the first time Christopher reached for his phone during their morning meal, Elena had simply taken it and locked it in a drawer until 8:30. He'd been furious for exactly 30 seconds before Sarah had laughed, really laughed, and Christopher realized he'd choose that sound over every business deal in the world. But tonight, everything was about to detonate. Christopher sat in his home office at 9:47 p.m., staring at an email that made his blood run cold. The subject line read, "Urgent, Tokyo acquisition failing. Your presence required." He clicked it open. "Christopher, the Yamamoto Group is threatening to pull out of the merger. They feel disrespected by your absence from negotiations over the past 3 weeks. Cultural protocol demands the CEO be present for final terms. They've given us 48 hours to get you to Tokyo or the deal dies. This is $3.2 billion. This is 2 years of work. This is 847 jobs that depend on this merger going through. You need to be on a plane tomorrow morning. Non-negotiable. James." Christopher's hands shook. 48 hours. He'd need to leave tomorrow, be gone for at least a week, maybe 2 if complications arose. Miss every breakfast, every lunch, every dinner. Break every promise he'd made to Sarah. He heard footsteps in the hallway. Elena appeared in his doorway, holding a mug of tea. She'd started making him chamomile at night, said it helped him sleep better. He'd complained at first, but she was right. She was always right. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Elena said, setting the mug on his desk. "Worse. A choice." Christopher turned his laptop toward her. "Read it." Elena scanned the email, her expression darkening. When she looked up, her eyes held something he couldn't quite read. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." Christopher ran his hands through his hair. $3 billion, Elena. Hundreds of jobs. 2 years of negotiations. If I don't go, it collapses. If I do go, you break Sarah's heart again. Elena's voice was quiet but firm. "It's not that simple, isn't it?" Elena sat in the chair across from him. "Christopher, this is exactly what I was afraid of. The first time something big demands your attention, you're already considering abandoning the promises you made. I'm not abandoning. It's 2 weeks. Maybe less. Sarah would understand. Would she?" Elena leaned forward. Or would she smile and say it's fine while dying inside? Would she go back to eating lunch alone, telling herself that business is more important than she is? That's not fair. None of this is fair. Life isn't fair. Rebecca dying wasn't fair. Sarah growing up without her mother isn't fair. But you get to choose what happens next. You get to decide if money matters more than your daughter. Christopher stood, pacing. It's not just money. It's people's livelihoods. Families who depend on these jobs. I have a responsibility. To everyone except the one person who needs you most. Elena stood too, matching his intensity. You have a vice president. You have a team of negotiators. Send them. Video conference. Find another way. The Yamamoto Group won't accept substitutes. It's their culture. The CEO must be present. They see my absence as disrespect. And what about Sarah? What does she see your absence as? The question hung between them like a blade. Christopher stopped pacing. You think I want to go? You think I want to choose between my daughter and my company? I think you've been choosing your company over your daughter for 4 years, and 3 good weeks doesn't undo that. Elena's eyes flashed. I think you're looking for permission to fall back into old patterns. I think part of you is relieved to have an excuse. That's not true, isn't it? Be honest with yourself, Christopher. Which is scarier, Losing $3 billion or staying here and doing the hard work of being a father every single day? The words struck like a physical blow. Christopher wanted to argue, to rage, to defend himself. But underneath the defensiveness was a terrible truth. Elena was right. Part of him, a small, cowardly part, was almost grateful for the crisis. Grateful for a reason to retreat into the familiar territory of business, where problems had solutions and success was measurable. Being a father was messier. Harder. Infinite. What would you do? He asked quietly. It doesn't matter what I would do. I'm not Sarah's father. Elena moved closer. But I'll tell you what I know. That little girl upstairs has been happy for 3 weeks. Really, genuinely happy. She comes home from school excited to tell you about her day. She sets the table for dinner with actual joy. She started drawing again. Did you know that? She stopped for 2 years after Rebecca died. But now she fills sketchbooks. Christopher didn't know. He felt the guilt like acid. If you leave now, Elena continued, you tell her that she was right all along. That business comes first. That she can't count on you. That love has conditions, and she didn't meet them. Elena's voice softened. Is $3 billion worth that message? Christopher sank back into his chair. His phone buzzed. James calling, probably to pressure him. He ignored it. I built this company from nothing, he said. 18 years of 16-hour days. Sacrifices. Risks. It's my legacy. Sarah is your legacy. Elena knelt beside his chair, her voice gentle now. 20 years from now, nobody will remember this merger. But Sarah will remember whether her father chose her or chose to leave. That's the legacy that matters. Christopher looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who'd taken the blame for a broken vase, who demanded he be better, who'd come back into his home and refused to let him fail his daughter again. When had she become so essential to his life? When had her opinion started mattering more than his board of directors? You're going to hate me for what I'm about to say, Elena said. But I need to say it anyway. What? If you get on that plane tomorrow, I'm leaving. For good this time. Her eyes held his, unwavering. I told you, I won't enable you. I won't watch Sarah survive another abandonment. And I can't, her voice caught. I can't stand by and watch you throw away what you've been building with her. It'll destroy me too. Christopher's breath stopped. Elena, I mean it. You go to Tokyo, I'm gone. And Sarah loses both of us at once. Elena stood. So you need to make a choice, Christopher. Right now? Tonight. What matters more? She left his office, closing the door quietly behind her. Christopher sat alone with his demons and his laptop and an email that demanded an answer. His phone lit up again, James. Then Victoria. Then 3 board members. The pressure mounting, the voices screaming that he had to go, had to save the deal, had to be the CEO. But upstairs, Sarah was sleeping peacefully for the first time in years. And down the hall, Elena was probably packing her bags, preparing for him to fail. Christopher closed his laptop. He picked up his phone and dialed James. Thank God, James answered. When's your flight? I'm not coming. Silence. Then, Christopher, you can't be serious. Send Victoria. She knows the deal inside and out. She's brilliant with cultural protocol. And she's family. That should satisfy their requirements. They want you. They'll get my sister, who's arguably better at negotiations than I am anyway. And James? If the Yamamoto Group can't respect that I have priorities beyond their merger, then maybe this isn't the right partnership. Christopher's voice was steady. Sure. Draw up the alternatives. We'll find another way. But I'm not leaving my daughter. You're making a $3 billion mistake. No, Christopher said quietly. I'm making a $3 billion decision. There's a difference. He hung up before James could argue further. Then he walked upstairs to Sarah's room. She was asleep, one arm wrapped around the stuffed elephant Elena had given her. Christopher sat on the edge of her bed, watching her breathe, and felt something settle in his chest. Peace. He'd made the right choice. Finally, I'm staying, he whispered to his sleeping daughter. I'm always going to stay. Behind him, Elena stood in the doorway. She'd heard everything. The phone call, the decision, the promise. Tears tracked down her cheeks. Christopher looked up and met her eyes. In that moment, something shifted between them. Something that had been building for weeks in breakfast conversations and shared dinners and quiet moments watching Sarah laugh. Something that felt dangerously like falling in love. But that was a complication for another day. Tonight was about a father choosing his daughter. About promises kept instead of broken. About learning, Finally, what actually mattered? Elena smiled through her tears. Christopher smiled back. And upstairs, Sarah slept peacefully, unaware that her father had just fought the biggest battle of his life. And won. The board meeting 3 days later was a massacre. Christopher sat at the head of the table while 8 board members, people he'd handpicked, people who'd built fortunes alongside him, tore into him like sharks scenting blood. The Yamamoto group walked. Gerald Thompson, the CFO, said flatly, 2 years of work, $3.2 billion. Gone because you couldn't be bothered to get on a plane. I sent Victoria. They wanted you. Margaret Chun, the COO, cut him off. Her expression was ice. Your sister is brilliant, but she's not the CEO. You disrespected their entire culture by refusing to show up personally. I had family obligations. Family obligations? Gerald's laugh was harsh. You're the CEO of a $20 billion company. You don't get the luxury of family obligations. You knew that when you took this position. Christopher felt his jaw tighten. My daughter needed me. Your daughter has staff. Nannies. Tutors. Margaret leaned forward. What she doesn't have is a college fund anymore, because our stock just dropped 14% in 3 days. The market is spooked. Investors think you've lost your edge. Your focus. Maybe I have. The words came out before Christopher could stop them. Maybe I've been focused on the wrong things for too long. The room went silent. Are you seriously suggesting, Gerald said slowly, that a little girl's feelings are worth more than the livelihoods of 847 employees who now face layoffs because we lost the merger? The words hit like a punch. Christopher hadn't thought about that. The ripple effects. The families who'd lose income, insurance, stability because he'd chosen breakfast with Sarah over a boardroom in Tokyo. We're calling for a vote of no confidence, Margaret said. The board believes you're no longer capable of leading this company. We're prepared to remove you as CEO effective immediately. Christopher's phone buzzed in his pocket. Once, twice, 3 times. He ignored it. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. The mistake was made when you prioritized your personal life over your fiduciary responsibility. Gerald stood. We'll vote in 2 days. I suggest you spend that time deciding whether you want to fight for your position or accept a generous severance package and step down gracefully. The meeting ended. Christopher sat alone in the boardroom as everyone filed out, their judgment heavy in the air. His phone buzzed again. He pulled it out. 5 missed calls from Elena. 3 texts. Call me. Now. Christopher, something happened. It's Sarah. His blood turned to ice. Christopher broke every speed limit getting home. He burst through the front door to find Elena pacing in the foyer, her face pale, her hands shaking. Where is she? He demanded. Her room. She won't come out. Won't talk to anyone. Elena's voice cracked. Christopher, someone at her school found out about the vase. About me getting fired. About everything. What? A parent. I don't know who. Told their daughter. And the kids, they were cruel. They said Sarah got an innocent woman fired. That she's a spoiled brat who destroys priceless things and lets other people take the blame. Elena's tears spilled over. They said her father bought her way out of consequences. That she's. Where are they? Christopher's voice was dangerous. Which kids? Which parents? It doesn't matter. The damage is done. Elena grabbed his arm. She came home 3 hours ago and locked herself in her room. I heard her crying. When I tried to talk to her through the door, she said, Elena's voice broke completely. She said she ruins everything she touches. That you lost your big deal because of her. That she's poison. Christopher felt the world tilt. How does she know about the merger? She's 10, not stupid. She heard you on the phone. Saw the news coverage about the stock drop. Kids at school asked if her dad was getting fired. Elena wiped her face. Christopher, she thinks this is all her fault. She thinks you chose her, and now you're losing everything because she's not worth it. The words shattered something in Christopher's chest. He took the stairs 2 at a time, Elena right behind him. Sarah's door was locked. He knocked gently. Sarah? Baby, it's Dad. Open the door. Silence. Sarah, please. I need to see you. Go away. Her voice was small, broken. You should be at work. You should be fixing everything I destroyed. You didn't destroy anything. Yes, I did. The anguish in her voice cut through the door like a blade. The vase, your company, Elena's job, everything. Everyone would be better off if I just disappeared. Christopher's hands shook as he gripped the doorknob. Sarah, open this door right now. No. I don't want you to look at me. I don't want you to pretend it's okay when I ruined your whole life. Elena put her hand on Christopher's shoulder. Let me try, she whispered. She knelt by the door. Sarah, honey, it's Elena. Remember what we talked about? About how the bravest thing you can do is let people love you even when you're scared. I'm not brave. I'm selfish and stupid and… You're 10 years old, Elena said firmly. You're a child who made an accident. And yes, there were consequences. But they were never your fault. Not the vase, not my firing, not your father's business problems. None of it. But Dad chose me over his company. Now he's losing everything. He chose you over money, Elena corrected. And he'd do it again. Right, Christopher? Christopher pressed his forehead against the door. 1,000 times over, he said, his voice thick. Sarah, listen to me. I could lose the company tomorrow. I could lose every dollar, every building, every contract. And I would still choose you. Every single time. Because you are the only thing in my life that actually matters. But those people who'll lose their jobs are not your responsibility. They're mine. Christopher swallowed hard. And yes, some of them might face hardship. That kills me. But Sarah, if I'd gotten on that plane, you know what I would have lost? You. Your trust. Your happiness. The chance to be your father instead of your ATM. That's a price I'm not willing to pay. Not for 3 billion. Not for 3 trillion. Silence. Then the soft click of the lock turning. The door opened. Sarah stood there, her face swollen from crying, her eyes red and devastated. She looked at her father with an expression that broke him completely. Do you hate me? She whispered. Christopher dropped to his knees and pulled her into his arms. I could never hate you. Never. You're my daughter. You're my whole world. His voice cracked. You're the best thing I've ever created, and I'm so sorry that you ever, for 1 second, thought otherwise. Sarah sobbed into his shoulder while Elena stood behind them, crying silently. They stayed like that for long minutes, Christopher holding his daughter while his empire crumbled around them. The kids at school said I'm a monster, Sarah finally managed. Then they're wrong. You're brave and kind, and you have the biggest heart of anyone I know. Christopher pulled back to look at her. You want to know what a monster is? A monster is someone who lets an innocent person take the blame for their mistakes. But that's not what happened. Elena chose to protect you. That's not your fault. That's her being extraordinary. I should have told the truth from the start. Maybe. Probably. But you were scared and Elena made a choice, and we all survived it. Christopher cupped her face gently. Sarah, life is messy. We all make mistakes. The measure of a person isn't whether they mess up. It's what they do after. And you? You apologized. You felt remorse. You learned. That's what matters. What about your company? What about it? Dad, you could lose everything because of me. I already had nothing, Christopher said fiercely. I had money and power and success, and I was empty. You know what I have now? Breakfast with my daughter. Lunch dates. Dinners where we actually talk. A home instead of a museum. That's everything, Sarah. That's the only thing that matters. Hey, if you're watching this and you've ever felt like you ruin everything you touch, stop right there. You're not poison. You're not a burden. You're a human being learning and growing and sometimes breaking things along the way. And that's okay. That's being alive. Drop a comment if you needed to hear that today. And subscribe if you want to see how this family survives the storm. Because trust me, we're not done yet. Elena knelt beside them. Sarah, look at me. Sarah turned, her face still tear-stained. Your father is fighting for you, Elena said softly. But he can't fight the whole world alone. He needs us. He needs you to believe that you're worth fighting for. Can you do that? Sarah looked between Elena and her father. Two people who'd chosen her, protected her, loved her even when it cost them everything. I'll try, she whispered. That's all any of us can do, Elena said. But outside those walls, the storm was gathering. The board vote was in 2 days. The media was circling. And somewhere in the shadows, someone was working very hard to make sure Christopher Harrington lost everything. The darkest hour wasn't over yet. Christopher woke at 3 a.m. to find Elena sitting in his study, surrounded by papers and laptop screens, her hair falling out of its usual neat bun. What are you doing? He asked from the doorway. She didn't look up. Fighting back. Christopher moved closer. The papers were financial documents, board meeting transcripts, news articles about Harrington Technologies. Elena's laptop showed a spreadsheet with columns of numbers that made his head hurt. Elena, it's 3 in the morning. You should be sleeping. So should you. She finally looked at him, and he saw the fire in her eyes. But we're both awake because we know that board vote in. She checked her phone. 14 hours is rigged. What are you talking about? Elena pulled up an email chain on her laptop. I've been doing some digging. Did you know that Gerald Thompson bought significant shares in Nakamura Industries 3 months ago? Christopher's blood went cold. Nakamura was Yamamoto's biggest competitor. That's impossible. That would be a massive conflict of interest. And completely illegal given his position on your board. Elena clicked to another screen. Margaret Chin too. Smaller investment, but still substantial. They've been planning this, Christopher. The Tokyo deal was designed to fail. Why would they? Because if Harrington Technologies looks unstable, vulnerable, someone could acquire it for pennies on the dollar. And guess who's positioned perfectly to benefit from that acquisition? Elena turned the laptop toward him. Christopher stared at the corporate structure diagram Elena had mapped out. His own board members had been systematically positioning themselves to profit from his company's collapse. They knew I wouldn't abandon Sarah, he whispered. They knew I'd choose her over Tokyo. They were counting on it. Gerald's been watching you for months. Probably since Elena. Since I came back. Elena stood, pacing. He knew you were changing. Becoming less ruthless. More human. And to him, that made you weak. Exploitable. Christopher felt rage building in his chest. They used my daughter against me. They tried to. Elena's smile was sharp. But here's what they didn't count on. Me having time to dig while you were being a father. They didn't count on a maid knowing how to read financial statements. My father was an accountant before he died. They definitely didn't count on me being petty enough to spend 3 nights building a case against them. Christopher looked at this woman, this fierce, brilliant, impossible woman who'd sacrificed her job for his daughter and was now sacrificing her sleep to save his company. When had she become so essential to his life? When had her smile become the thing he looked for first every morning? Why, he asked. Why are you doing this? Elena met his eyes. Because you chose Sarah. Because you became the man she needed you to be. Because, she hesitated, vulnerability flashing across her face. Because your family matters to me. Both of you. The air between them changed. Charged. Christopher took a step closer. Elena, don't. She held up a hand, but her voice was soft. Not yet. Not while everything's burning. But after, if we survive this. Ask me again. Christopher nodded, his heart pounding. So what do we do? The vote is in 14 hours. We expose them. But not at the board meeting. They'll spin it, control the narrative, make you look desperate. Elena pulled up another document. We go public. Press conference. Lay out everything. The conflicts of interest, the insider trading, the deliberate sabotage. We turn the spotlight on them before they can destroy you. That's a nuclear option. It could destroy the company's reputation. The company's reputation is already in the toilet. Stock down 14%, CEO facing no confidence vote, major merger collapsed. We're already at rock bottom. Elena's eyes blazed. But this way, we go down fighting. We show the investors that you're not weak, you're principled. That you were sabotaged by people they trusted. Christopher ran his hands through his hair. It's risky. Everything worth doing is risky. You taught me that. Elena smiled. Well, technically you screamed it at a conference call 3 months ago when I brought you coffee. But the point stands. Despite everything, Christopher laughed. I was an ass. You were. You're better now. Elena's expression softened. Christopher, you've spent 3 weeks proving you can be a good father. Now it's time to prove you can be a good CEO and a good father. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. What if I lose everything anyway? Then we start over. You, me, and Sarah. Elena said it so simply, so matter-of-factly, like she was offering to make breakfast instead of pledging to stand by him through potential financial ruin. But I don't think you'll lose. I think when people see what you're really fighting for, when they see a father who chose his daughter over billions, some of them will understand. Maybe enough of them. Christopher wanted to kiss her. God. He wanted to pull her close and kiss her until neither of them could breathe. But she was right. Not yet. Not while everything was burning. Okay, he said. We fight. How do we start? Elena grinned. We start by waking up your sister. If anyone knows how to orchestrate a hostile press conference, it's Victoria. By 7 a.m., Victoria Harrington was sitting in Christopher's study, reading through Elena's evidence with an expression that got progressively more murderous. I'm going to destroy them, she said calmly. I'm going to take everything they love and burn it to ashes. I'm starting to see the family resemblance, Elena muttered. Victoria looked up at Elena with newfound respect. You did this? All of this research. I had free time between making breakfast and convincing your brother not to be an idiot. Elena shrugged. Multitasking. I like her, Victoria told Christopher. Don't screw this up. The company, or both. Victoria turned back to the documents. Okay, here's what we do. I call an emergency press conference for noon. That gives us time before the board vote. We present everything. The conflicts of interest, the timeline, the whole conspiracy. But Christopher, you need to own your decision about Tokyo. Don't apologize for it. Make them understand why family matters more than money. What if they don't care? Some won't, but some will. And more importantly, the board members who aren't corrupt, and there are still a few, will see the truth. They'll vote to remove Gerald and Margaret instead of you. Victoria's smile was predatory. We turned their coup into their execution. A soft knock at the door. Sarah stood there in her pajamas, her elephant tucked under her arm. Dad, why is everyone up so early? Christopher's heart clenched. His daughter, whose crisis had been overshadowed by corporate warfare. Come here, baby. Sarah approached cautiously. Victoria and Elena quietly excused themselves, giving father and daughter privacy. I heard you talking, Sarah said. About the board wanting to fire you. About those people who planned it. She looked up at him with those eyes so much like Rebecca's. Are you going to be okay? I don't know, Christopher admitted. But I'm going to fight. For us. For our family. For the right to keep having breakfast with you every morning. Sarah bit her lip. What if you lose? Then I lose. But Sarah, I need you to understand something. Christopher knelt so they were eye level. Win or lose, I don't regret choosing you. I will never regret choosing you. You are worth more than any company, any amount of money, any deal. You believe me? I think so. That's good enough for now. Christopher kissed her forehead. Now, I need you to do something for me. Something hard. What? I need you to be brave today. When I do this press conference, the cameras might show up here. People might ask you questions. And I need you to hold your head high and remember that you didn't do anything wrong. Can you do that? Sarah straightened her shoulders. Will Elena be here? Elena will be right beside you. I promise. Then I can do it. Sarah hugged him tight. Dad, thank you for staying home. Even if it costs everything. Christopher held his daughter and felt something crystallize in his chest. Certainty. Purpose. Love. It didn't cost everything, he whispered. It gave me everything. At 11:45 a.m., Christopher stood behind a podium in the Harrington Technologies main conference room, facing a sea of reporters and cameras. Victoria stood to his left, her expression granite. Elena stood to his right, her presence a quiet anchor. And in the back of the room, watching on a video feed from home where Sarah could see without being overwhelmed, his daughter watched her father prepare to fight for their family. Christopher looked directly into the main camera. 3 weeks ago, he began, I fired my housekeeper for breaking a priceless vase. Then I watched security footage and discovered she'd taken the blame to protect my daughter. That moment changed my life. It showed me I'd become someone I didn't recognize, someone who valued things over people, money over family, success over love. He paused, letting the words settle. Today, I'm here to tell you about people who've taken that philosophy to its logical extreme. People who see human beings as collateral damage in their pursuit of profit. And I'm here to tell you that I'm done playing that game. Christopher nodded to Victoria, who began distributing the evidence packets to reporters. This is the evidence of a coordinated conspiracy to sabotage Harrington Technologies. Board members with conflicts of interest. Insider trading. Deliberate destruction of a major merger. All designed to make me look weak so they could swoop in and profit from the ashes. The room erupted in questions. Christopher held up a hand. I'm not here to ask for sympathy. I'm here to tell the truth. Yes, I chose my daughter over a business deal. Yes, that had consequences. But I'd make that choice again. Because at the end of my life, I won't remember the mergers. I'll remember breakfast with Sarah. And that's worth fighting for. In the back of the room, on the video feed, Sarah wiped tears from her eyes. And Elena smiled. The battle had begun. The board meeting began at 2 p.m., but the war had already been won in the court of public opinion. Christopher walked into the boardroom with Victoria at his side and Elena waiting in the lobby, close enough to matter, far enough to avoid the corporate bloodbath about to unfold. The press conference had detonated like a bomb. Within an hour, 3 major news outlets were running stories about the corruption. Within 2 hours, the SEC had opened an investigation. Within 3 hours, Gerald Thompson and Margaret Chun had both retained lawyers. Now, sitting at the conference table with 6 remaining board members, Christopher watched his former allies squirm. Gerald wasn't there. Neither was Margaret. Their seats were conspicuously empty, their absence an admission of guilt louder than any confession. "Let's begin," Christopher said calmly. "I believe there was a vote scheduled to remove me as CEO." Robert Park, the oldest board member and the one Christopher trusted most, cleared his throat. "Given the revelations from this morning's press conference, Christopher, I think we need to address a different matter first. The evidence you presented, it's damning. Gerald and Margaret have been placed on immediate leave pending investigation. I want them prosecuted," Christopher said. "Fully. Publicly. They tried to destroy this company and 847 jobs to line their own pockets. I want everyone to know what happens when you prioritize greed over integrity." "Agreed," Robert said. "But there's something else you should know." He pulled out his phone and turned it toward Christopher. The screen showed the Harrington Technologies stock price. It had climbed 7% in the past 3 hours. "The market's responding to your honesty," Robert explained. "Investors are calling your press conference the most authentic display of leadership they've seen in corporate America in decades. They're buying in. Not despite your choice to stay with your daughter, because of it." Christopher stared at the numbers, hardly believing them. "That's impossible." "It's not." Victoria pulled out her own phone. "Twitter's on fire with support. #FamilyFirst is trending. Parents are sharing stories about choosing their kids over careers. You've become a folk hero, Chris. People are tired of CEOs who treat their families like quarterly earnings. You showed them something different." "But the Tokyo deal is being revisited," Robert interrupted. "The Yamamoto Group saw your press conference. Their CEO called me an hour ago. He said, and I'm quoting here, 'A man who honors his family understands honor in business. We want to discuss terms again.'" Christopher's mind reeled. "They want back in. They were insulted by your absence before. Now they see it as principle, not disrespect. They respect principle." Robert smiled. "Christopher, you've turned a catastrophe into a corporate revolution. You didn't just save your job. You've redefined what leadership looks like. What about the vote?" "There won't be one." "Well," Robert glanced around the table, "there will be a vote to remove Gerald and Margaret from the board permanently. As for you, you're exactly where you need to be, leading this company with integrity." Christopher felt the weight he'd been carrying for weeks lift slightly. But it wasn't triumph he felt. It was something quieter. Relief. Validation. The knowledge that doing the right thing hadn't destroyed everything after all. "I want to make something clear," Christopher said, looking each board member in the eye. "This company operates differently now. We prioritize people, employees, families, communities. Profit matters, but it's not the only thing that matters. If any of you have a problem with that philosophy, leave now. I'll understand. But I won't compromise on this." Silence. Then Robert started clapping. One by one, the other board members joined him. "About damn time," Robert said. "Rebecca would be proud of you, son." Christopher's throat tightened at the mention of his late wife. She would have demanded this years ago. "Then let's honor her memory by building something she'd want to see." The meeting adjourned. Christopher walked out to find Elena pacing in the lobby, her phone pressed to her ear. When she saw him, her face transformed with relief. "He's here," she said into the phone. "I'll tell him." She hung up. "That was Sarah? She wants to know if you still have a job." "I still have a job." Elena's smile could have lit the entire building. "Good. Because she's been stress baking with Margaret the housekeeper for 2 hours. The kitchen looks like a flower bomb exploded." Christopher laughed, really laughed, for the first time in days. "I should probably go home." "Yeah, you should." Elena's expression shifted, becoming something softer, more vulnerable. "Christopher, wait." He stepped closer, close enough to see the gold flecks in her brown eyes. "I need to say something first. You saved my company. You saved my relationship with my daughter. You saved me. And I need you to know. Christopher, I'm in love with you." The words tumbled out, raw and true. "I don't know when it happened. Maybe when you took the blame for that vase. Maybe when you demanded I be better. Maybe at breakfast last Tuesday when you laughed at Sarah's joke and I realized I couldn't imagine my life without that sound. But Elena, I love you. And I need you to know that before." Elena kissed him. It was soft and fierce and perfect, her hands cupping his face while he wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her closer. The world narrowed to this moment, this woman, this impossible gift he'd done nothing to deserve. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Elena was crying. "I love you too," she whispered. "I've loved you since you sat in that beanbag chair and really listened to your daughter for the first time. Since you chose her over billions. Since you became the man I always knew you could be. I want you in my life. Both of you. Not as Sarah's caretaker or the housekeeper or anything except Elena." She smiled through her tears. "Just Elena, who loves you and loves Sarah and wants to build something real with both of you. Is that a yes?" "That's a yes. To everything. To mornings and dinners and all the messy, complicated, beautiful moments in between." Elena kissed him again, softer this time. "But you need to ask Sarah how she feels about this. This affects her too." "I know. I will. Tonight." Christopher rested his forehead against hers. "But right now, I just want to stand here and process the fact that I got to keep my job and tell you I love you in the same day. Overachiever. You're one to talk. You brought down a corporate conspiracy in 3 sleepless nights. I'm very petty when properly motivated." Elena grinned. "Come on. Your daughter made approximately 14 dozen cookies, and she's going to force-feed them to both of us." They drove home together, Christopher's hand finding Elena's across the center console. Everything had changed in 3 weeks. Everything was still changing. But for the first time in 4 years, Christopher felt like he was moving in the right direction. The house was indeed covered in flour. Sarah stood in the kitchen wearing an apron 3 sizes too big, her face smudged with chocolate, her smile brilliant. "Dad, you're not fired." "I'm not fired." Christopher swept her into a hug, lifting her off the ground. "And it's partly because of you." "Me? I didn't do anything except make cookies. You gave me a reason to fight. You reminded me what actually matters." Christopher set her down. "Sarah, I need to talk to you about something important." Sarah's eyes darted between her father and Elena, who stood in the doorway. "Okay. You know Elena's been part of our family for a while now. Part of our breakfasts and dinners and all the in-between moments." Christopher knelt, so he was at Sarah's eye level. "How would you feel if she became an even bigger part of our family? Permanently?" Sarah's eyes widened. "Like, are you asking if you can date Elena?" "Essentially, yes. But I wanted your blessing first. You're the most important person in my life, and if this makes you uncomfortable..." "Are you kidding?" Sarah threw her arms around both of them. "Elena's the best thing that ever happened to us. Well, besides you becoming not terrible. But she helped with that." Christopher and Elena laughed, holding Sarah between them. "So that's a yes?" Elena asked. "That's a yes times a million." Sarah pulled back. "Does this mean Elena's moving in?" "Because her apartment is tiny and kind of sad." "It is tiny and sad," Elena admitted. "But we should probably take things slow." "You've been living here for 3 weeks already," Sarah pointed out. "And you have a toothbrush in the main bathroom. And your favorite tea in the cabinet. And Dad looks at you like Mom used to look at him in the old photos." Christopher blinked. "I do. You do," Victoria said from the kitchen doorway. "It's disgusting. I love it." She walked in and stole a cookie. "Congratulations, you 3. You survived a corporate coup, a family crisis, and Christopher's emotional constipation all in 1 month. That's impressive." "Aunt Vic," Sarah protested, but she was laughing. The kitchen filled with warmth and cookies and the sound of people who'd found each other in the wreckage and decided to build something new. Christopher looked around at his daughter, his sister, and the woman he loved, and felt the final pieces of his broken world click into place. Not perfect, not without scars, but whole, finally whole. 6 months later, the morning sun poured through the kitchen windows of the Harrington mansion, catching the steam rising from 3 mugs of coffee. Well, 2 coffees and 1 hot chocolate with an obscene amount of whipped cream. Christopher stood at the stove, flipping pancakes while Elena chopped strawberries and Sarah set the table with exaggerated care, arranging the silverware like she was preparing for royalty. "Dad, you're burning them again," Sarah observed. "I'm creating texture," Christopher corrected. "You're creating charcoal," Elena said, laughing as she rescued the smoking pan. "Go sit down. You're the CEO, not the chef. In this house, I'm both." But Christopher surrendered the spatula anyway, stealing a kiss from Elena as he passed. Sarah made an exaggerated gagging sound that fooled no one. Her grin was enormous. "You two are gross," she declared, but her eyes were shining. "You love it," Elena said. "I really do." Sarah's voice went soft. "I love all of this." Christopher pulled out a chair and sat, watching his daughter, his thriving, laughing, confident daughter, arrange flowers in the center of the table. She'd grown 3 inches in 6 months. Started an art club at school. Made 2 best friends who came over every Friday for movie nights. Stopped having nightmares about being alone. The transformation was nothing short of miraculous. "Hey," Elena said softly, nudging his shoulder. "Where'd you go?" "Just thinking about how different everything is." Christopher caught her hand, threading their fingers together. "How different we are. Better different. Best different." Elena had moved in officially 3 months ago, though as Sarah had pointed out, she'd practically been living there anyway. Her apartment had been sublet to a young teacher who sent monthly emails about how grateful she was for the affordable rent. Elena had insisted on keeping it below market rate because not everyone gets fairy tale endings. Some people just need a break. That was Elena. Always seeing people, always caring, always making the world softer around its sharp edges. The Yamamoto merger had closed 2 months ago. Christopher had flown to Tokyo for 3 days, with nightly video calls to Sarah and a promise that he'd be home by Friday. He'd kept that promise. He kept all his promises now. Harrington Technologies was thriving under new leadership principles. Employee satisfaction was up 40%. Turnover was at an all-time low. Profits were actually higher than before because, as it turned out, people worked harder for a company that treated them like humans instead of revenue streams. Gerald Thompson and Margaret Chun were awaiting trial for securities fraud, insider trading, and conspiracy. Their lawyers had tried to negotiate plea deals. Christopher had refused to support leniency. Some betrayals didn't deserve forgiveness, only justice. "Earth to Dad." Sarah waved her hand in front of his face. "Pancakes are ready." They sat together, the 3 of them, passing syrup and butter and stories about their plans for the day. Sarah had an art competition at school. Elena was meeting with the director of a local youth center about starting a mentorship program. Christopher had back-to-back meetings until 3. Then he was picking Sarah up from school, his new Wednesday tradition. "Oh," Sarah suddenly jumped up. "I almost forgot." She ran to the counter and returned with a carefully wrapped package, setting it in front of her father. "Open it." Christopher exchanged a confused glance with Elena, who looked equally surprised. "What's this?" "Just open it." He unwrapped the package slowly, revealing a framed drawing. His breath caught. It was them. Christopher, Elena, and Sarah, sitting at this exact table, rendered in Sarah's distinctive style, part realistic, part whimsical. But it was the background that made Christopher's throat tighten. Behind them, sketched in delicate lines, was Rebecca, not sad or ghostly, but smiling. Her hand rested on Christopher's shoulder, her expression peaceful. "I wanted to remember Mom," Sarah said quietly, "but I also wanted to show that she'd be happy for us. That it's okay to be happy again. Is that weird?" Christopher couldn't speak. He pulled Sarah into his arms, holding her while his shoulders shook with emotion he couldn't contain. Elena came around the table, wrapping both of them in her embrace. "It's perfect," she whispered. "It's absolutely perfect. I've been working on it for 2 months," Sarah continued, her voice muffled against Christopher's shirt. "I wanted it to be special. Because you guys are special. Because this," she gestured around the kitchen, at the pancakes and the morning light and the love filling every corner. "This is what family feels like. Real family." Christopher finally found his voice. "Your mom would love this, Sarah. She'd love you. She'd love seeing how brave and talented and kind you've become." He pulled back to look at his daughter. "And you're right. She'd be happy for us. All of us." "I think she sent Elena to us," Sarah said matter-of-factly, "because she knew we needed help and she couldn't be here to give it. So she sent the next best thing." Elena was crying now, not bothering to hide it. "That's a beautiful thought, sweetheart. It's true. You love Dad the way Mom did. Like you see all his annoying parts, but you stick around anyway. And you love me even though I broke an expensive vase and got you fired in." "Stop." Elena cupped Sarah's face gently. "You didn't get me fired. You gave me the greatest gift of my life. You and your dad. This family. I'd break 1,000 vases for this." "Please don't," Christopher said. "I just had the gallery renovated." They all laughed through their tears, a messy, beautiful moment that belonged only to them. That afternoon, Christopher stood in his office, looking at Sarah's drawing now hung prominently on the wall behind his desk. Every person who entered would see it. A CEO who prioritized family over everything, unashamed and unapologetic. His phone buzzed. A text from Elena. Sarah crushed her art competition. First place. She's crying happy tears. Get here when you can. We love you. Christopher was already grabbing his coat. The contracts on his desk could wait. The emails could wait. Everything could wait. His family was celebrating, and he wasn't going to miss it for the world. He drove to the school with the windows down, spring air rushing through the car, feeling lighter than he had in years. Maybe lighter than he'd ever felt. The weight of grief and guilt and relentless ambition had been replaced by something simpler, clearer. Purpose, love, presence. When he arrived, Sarah ran to him, her blue ribbon flapping in the breeze, her face radiant with joy. Elena stood behind her, phone out to capture the moment. Her smile the thing he looked for first every morning and last every night. You came. Sarah threw herself into his arms. Of course I came. I'll always come. Christopher lifted her, spinning her around like he used to when she was small, before grief had made him forget how to play. I'm so proud of you, baby girl. My drawing's going to the district competition. Then we'll go to that too. All of us. Elena joined them, and Christopher wrapped his free arm around her waist, holding his entire world in his arms. Other parents were watching, smiling at the display of uncomplicated love. Let them watch. Let them see what choosing family looked like. Ice cream, Sarah suggested. Ice cream, Christopher agreed. And then dinner at that Italian place you love. And then home for movie night. The whole evening. Just us. Just us, Sarah echoed, the words holding weight and promise and the beautiful certainty that she would never again have to eat dinner alone. That night, after Sarah had fallen asleep with her blue ribbon pinned to her pillow and her elephant tucked under her arm, Christopher and Elena sat on the back patio, sharing a bottle of wine under the stars. Thank you, Christopher said quietly. For what? For taking the blame for a broken vase. For demanding I be better. For loving Sarah. For loving me. For his voice caught. For saving us. Elena leaned her head on his shoulder. You saved yourselves. I just refused to let you give up. That's the same thing. Maybe. She smiled against his shirt. Christopher, can I tell you something? Anything. When I took the blame that day, I thought my life was ending. Getting fired. Losing everything. It felt like the worst thing that could happen. Elena looked up at him, her eyes reflecting starlight. But it was actually the beginning. The beginning of this. Of us. Of a family I never thought I'd have. Christopher kissed her, slow and deep and full of promises. Marry me. Elena pulled back, eyes wide. What? Marry me. Not now, whenever you're ready. A year, 2 years, I don't care. But Elena Rodriguez, I want you to be my wife. I want Sarah to have you as her mother officially. I want to build a life with you that's not about contracts or titles or anything except love and breakfast and all the messy, beautiful moments in between. Elena was crying again, happy tears this time, streaming down her face as she nodded. Yes. Yes, of course yes. You magnificent idiot, yes. They kissed under the stars, two people who'd found each other in the wreckage and built something beautiful from the broken pieces. Inside, Sarah stirred in her sleep, smiling without waking, as if she could feel the love surrounding her even in dreams. The mansion that had once felt like a museum, cold and perfect and empty, was finally a home, filled with laughter and burnt pancakes and art competitions and second chances, filled with family. And somewhere, in whatever place exists beyond grief and time, Rebecca Harrington smiled too. Before we close, I want to say something to all of you watching. If you've stayed with us through this entire journey, through the brokenness and the healing, through the mistakes and the redemption, thank you. Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about choosing to show up, day after day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. If this story touched you, if it reminded you to prioritize the people who matter most, drop a comment below. Share your own story of choosing love over everything else. And please, hit that subscribe button. Because there are more stories like this one. Stories about broken people becoming whole, about love that refuses to give up, about families that find each other in the most unexpected ways. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing in second chances. Now go hug the people you love. Go have breakfast with them. Go be present. That's where the real magic lies. 1 year later, on a sunny Saturday morning, Elena Rodriguez became Elena Harrington in a small ceremony in the mansion's garden. Sarah served as maid of honor, wearing purple and carrying a bouquet she'd designed herself. Victoria cried through the entire ceremony. Margaret, the housekeeper, had baked a 7-tier cake. And on the mantelpiece in the main hall, a new vase stood, not Ming Dynasty, not priceless, but beautiful nonetheless. A gift from Sarah, purchased with her allowance, with a card that read, "Some things are meant to break, so better things can begin. Love, your daughter." Christopher kept that card in his wallet for the rest of his life. And every morning, without fail, the Harrington family had breakfast together. No phones, no distractions, just love and pancakes and the beautiful certainty that they had finally found their way home.